Controller,
Michelle Mark Levine, representing Controller.
Mr. Spitzer,
Here.
Mr. Kaplan,
Present.
Mr. Lawson,
Present.
sitting in for John Grathwall, Ms. Fleming, in a voting capacity. All right, the next order of business, we have a quorum, is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of December 16th. Second?
I'll second it.
Okay, hearing no objections, the minutes are approved. The next order of business is the OMB update on the city grants management system. Could you be kind enough to introduce yourselves?
Good morning. Is this on? Do I have that on?
Is it on, sir? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for having us here. I'm Larry Angelo. I'm the first deputy director at OMB, and sitting beside me is Louisa Sanchez, an assistant director at OMB, who's been leading the creation of the capital grants management system. So good morning, and thanks for having me back. We came here last June, and we said we would finally begin to address the absence of a grants management system in the city budget. And I'm here to report on our progress, because I said I would come back. And I'm happy to tell you that the system has been constructed, the technology is working, the staff has been hired, and we now have 3 grants from this year entered into the system. So we are, I won't say up and running, but I will say up and walking. The technology we decided to use was a computer platform that would combine an easy-to-use electronic questionnaire called the IRM system. We wanted something easy so that we had some chance of the agencies actually using it, and it is quite easy to use. The questionnaire will allow the agency to enter all of the information that you want to know on a grant to monitor its progress and also to make sure it remains a good receivable. Things like drawdown terms and Davis-Bacon requirements, and to attach documents right into the system. We use the revenue source code and the reporting category to match the data in the IRM system to the existing financial data in FMS3, the general ledger. After you've matched these 2 data sets, and that will happen automatically, and we will have a daily data dump from FISA, you will be able to know everything about the grant, and you'll be able to monitor spending, billing, collecting revenues, et cetera. I'd like to thank Chidi Uziolu at OMB, who worked on this, with George Worley, Robert Lynn, and Victor Winnie, help me. Victor, are you here? Well, Victor, in your absence, if I could say your last name, but congratulations. The questions on the questionnaire were vetted by OMB's capital unit, the accounting unit, and the agency task forces, as well as the controller and George Davis. So hopefully this will be a system that will, again, allow financial monitoring and also help with the audit process at the end of the year. We chose to focus on 4 agencies, DOT, DEP, Parks, and SBS, because those agencies together hold 80% of the grants. So they're the first 4 in. We have trained all the agencies in the system. They know they need to begin entering all grants from 2016 into the system. And I'm happy to say that at this point, there's no way for any new grant to get in the system except through this IRM system. No one in OMB will respond and give a reporting category or a revenue source code unless it comes through the system. We created a new unit, and we have a new workflow. Paul Fessler at FISA, and in fact, the entire FISA team has been especially helpful in designing the workflow and providing training for us, all of us. The system automatically moves the information through a workflow process, which is outlined on this first sheet of paper. And every time one part of the process is completed, an automatic email is sent out to everyone concerned with the grant. This will allow us to have everyone having the same information at the same time. In addition, by the time the grant has gone through the entire process, on the second page, you'll see emails that will allow everyone to simply have all of this information in an easily accessible and fileable electronic form. We're beginning to talk with the agencies soon to discuss their claiming and their revenue history. And again, we will match this data to any data we can gather on the grants that existed prior to 2016. I will say, we've started to look at the data agencies have on their older grants, and it's somewhat chaotic. It's not complete, but it is something, and we will parse through it. We have 3 new folks who've been hired who will parse through it, enter whatever we can find that is useful, and begin talking with agencies about why you have spent $10 million and only claimed 2. So that's the point of the system. And hopefully there aren't too many cases of that. As soon as we get the first 4 large agencies under control, we're going to roll the system out to the rest of the agencies, probably focusing on uniforms next, culturals and libraries after that, EDC, DCAS, and DYCD, and finally homeless, CUNY, HRA. The agencies that tend not to have a lot of capital grants. So we're assuming if we can figure out how to do it right with the big 4, it'll be easier to get the rest of the grants in. You have in your package, in addition to the email, you have two actual grants filled out, and you can just kind of page through the information in the questionnaire form. And we have one example that we've given you of several grants from parks that are federal grants that we have matched successfully to FISA, the general ledger, and again, have filled it with whatever information we can get because they're older grants. So that's an update of where we are. I hope you consider this a fair down payment. And I will be back in a year, hopefully to tell you all of the other agencies' capital grants are in the system and that we've made some progress on working on the expense grants. Thank you.
I know, and it's again in the current management letter, the city's independent auditors have been critical for years that we have no grants management system, which you're aware. And I think they're alluding to the expense budget more than anything else.
No,
I think so.
It would be in regards to
Capital,
the grant.
but given the size, the expense budget is humongous.
Correct, but this is,
But so I guess I think this is a lot of progress, and I thank you. But when do you think we could begin using this system in the expense budget rather than the capital budget? When do you think that could happen? Next fiscal year?
I will just say, we started on the capital budget because...
Oh, no, that makes good
that's fine.
sense.
Okay, fine. I will come back in the summer, in July, and report on some progress made on pulling the expense budget into this system.
Okay, okay.
I appreciate that, but I think it's great that we started down the road.
It's a good start.
Thank you very much, yeah.
That was the right thing.
But relative to the federal and state expense grants, have you looked at it at all relative to this, or that's something you're going to do in the next few months? Because the process for the expense side is a little bit more complicated.
Right.
It's probably not a linear process up from what you
Right.
do. You have to build a host of other things into the process, I assume.
Yeah, we haven't looked at it in detail. I mean, we have looked at it. And one of the big issues there will be separating out what I'm going to call formula grants, which are the ones that most agencies manage pretty well. It's, Title I in education. You get it, you know what you're going to get, you know how you have to spend it. There's some disallowances, but it's not too crazy. They resolve it in a couple of years. From what I'm going to call the one-off grants that an agency may get, as a one-shot here and there. And I suspect those are going to look, going to say, as disorganized as the capital grants are. So when I was in OMB before, I had education as one of my accounts. And, even a large place like DOE could manage its formula grants fairly well without too much problem. but the one-off grants were all over the place. So yeah, we will speed that up, and hopefully I'll come back in July with some progress on that front.
Very good.
On the capital side, you started using it in we are in the fifth process
Okay.
of monitoring that round of grants.
Okay, so we thought agency cooperation would be crucial. So what the deal we made with the agencies was, starting now in 2016, every capital grant has to go through the system. And that's great. And it's,
We started with
that's right.
2016. We didn't
Yeah.
use it at all in the 2015 process.
well, we will. So what we told the agencies we would do is we would do the research on the older capital grants with their help and try and get as much information as we could find. And we would enter that data into the system. And again, then it would be matched with the general ledger and provide some guidance on how the agency is managing its grants. But there's going to be a lot of back and forth and discussion with the agencies, especially with the older grants.
So the reason why we started Capital First was largely because last year we did a very intensive capital cleanup of all of the grants that we've had historically back to
Okay,
1979.
no, I could understand that.
So this was actually a clean slate where Larion's group could start knowing that the universe they were starting from had been scrubbed for amounts that perhaps weren't still valid.
That leads me to my question. I have two. I have a
Okay.
substantive question and a process question. How many dollars are involved in this 80% of the universe that you're talking about? So we get some idea of what we're talking, the size and shape.
Do we have a account with us? I'm sorry, we didn't bring it with you, but with us, but we will get back to you on that.
Of the
Yeah.
aggregate grants.
Right.
Do you know what that number is, all the grants?
I don't have that with me,
You don't
I'm
know that,
sorry.
so you don't know what this percentage is.
No, we have it back, but I don't actually, oh, no, it's 80%, and that's why we chose it.
Translates into.
Yes, that's, yeah.
Second thing I observed is the next time, if you could get this material to us before the
Sure.
meeting, so we could read it and react to it rather than just sit and listen, I think it would be helpful.
Totally understood, yes.
You alluded to like Title I in education. I don't know, maybe the controller wants to jump in. I think HRA, some of its grants, or, the TANF grants, they've been around for years under different names. So I think those are easy to, it's a little easier there, I imagine. No, am I wrong, Michelle?
There are different complexities to.
I'm sorry?
There are different complexities to those.
Oh, there
grants.
always are
There
complexities.
rules and-
It's a big business,
Yeah.
there has to be complexities. All right.
But again, I agree, most agencies can handle most of their formula grants fairly well.
I would think so. I would think so. And I guess, once you go to the expense budget, like you say, you want to take an agency that's had it for a long time, and they're, doing a good job, and so on and so forth. Go ahead, Michelle.
Mark.
No, go ahead, Michelle, ladies first.
I just wanted to say that, we've been working closely with OMB, both in the major cleanup job, and you have kept us informed and consulted us along the way.
Oh, it's fine.
With the grants management system. I just really want to thank you. I think it's been a great,
Very good.
successful partnership. I think we are moving the city forward tremendously, even if it's slowly. And I think that this really shows what people can do when we work together across offices.
Thank you
Who's here
very
from
much.
Pfizer? Could you raise your hands, or, yeah? I remember they were here the last time. Thank you for everything. Okay.
I would like to ask the auditors their view of, you've been commenting on the absence of this. See the view of what's happened now?
We were consulted. I mean, we had the same presentation, a little bit more in depth, and we were asked to review it. We're pleased to say that, it seems to be moving in the right direction.
Good.
However, we still have the comment, which you saw in the management letter. But again, it's a huge undertaking, and as Michelle talked about or alluded to, the cross-functionality between OMB and the Controller's Office has been beneficial in this project, but clearly the lion's share is still ahead of the game, and ultimately, we would like to see for the City of New York a fully automated system whereby in the future at some point, and that's going to be down the road quite some time, you push a button. There's still a lot of manual input that goes on to generate these numbers, and it's a culmination with Nicole, George, OMB, and the Controller's Office. So you're getting there. Are you there yet? The the answer is no, but are we pleased with what we've seen so far? As far as the paperwork goes, yes, because we haven't seen it implemented, because as it was talked about, it will be implemented for 2016. So we are pleased where it's going directionally.
Careful response.
But as Larry said, I really would welcome seeing a status report in about 6 months.
Yeah.
Because I think this is a very significant effort.
No, it's a
Really
very great
appreciate
first
it,
step.
But historically, the problem is that it's tended to get knocked off target as other things begin to take precedent. So I think it's really important that we continue to track it rather carefully.
And I think that the creation of a new unit, so now there are 3 people whose entire life is dedicated to getting this moving, and no one's going to knock them off. Although as you know, I've been knocked off a little bit this morning, but
Just because I guess I'm the only person around here who works for the city. Right. How much has this cost so far, and what's your estimate of the cost to complete?
That's expensive. I'm
okay,
sorry.
I am very, very happy to say that we decided to go with a city-owned and designed system, which is called the IRM system, and that's the system that takes the questionnaire. The FISA data dump are the FISA guys, and we hired someone in ONB to work with the mayor's information management system office to do the match. I would estimate that had we gone outside the city, it would have cost $2 million. Because we went inside the city, I'm going to say it's about $175,000. And that's really people's time.
This magnitude, that's quite an accomplishment economically.
It's a bargain.
It's a bargain.
I think we've developed good products internally at FISA in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And to use those resources
Yeah.
is the right approach to trying to buy something off the shelf.
Right. I mean, just seeing, yeah,
Never fits.
yeah,
And we spend a huge amount of effort
Yeah.
trying to modify it.
Yeah.
By the time we're done, it doesn't look like
right.
off
What
the
we,
shelf
yeah.
product at all.
I mean, when I think about how many times we modified this, us, Nicole's comments, Michelle's comments, everybody else's comments, if those had been change orders, it would have cost an enormous amount of money.
All right.
So,
Are there any more comments? Again, thank you for coming.
thank you very much.
And
See you in July.
you're moving along. What?
See you in July. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good job.
We may move that back to June, we don't have a July meeting. Oh, okay. Oh, I'll be doing it, tell you?
Yeah, but Grand Central, what's his name? What is he? She told me.
Oh, I didn't write it down, I was busy talking.
All right, we'll see. He'll introduce himself. Hey, how are you, sir?
Good morning, how are you? Oh, jeez. Good morning, how are you? How are you?
The next,
Morning.
the next agency that we're doing is the Grand Central Partnership, the Business Improvement District. Could you
Yes.
introduce yourself again, please?
Yes, of course, good morning. I'm Fred Cerullo, I'm the president of the Grand Central Partnership. I'm joined this morning by Peter Lempin, our vice president, and William Scotty of Scotty, Scott and Company, which are our independent auditors who prepared the financials that are before you. I think it's still, since it's January, I could say Happy New Year to all of you. Hard to believe a whole year has passed since the last time we've met for this review, but it's good to be here as always, and to look back a little bit on fiscal year 15 and some of our accomplishments, particularly in the financial area. As you can see from the documents that you received and were approved by our board back in November, we had a very strong fiscal year, which is pretty consistent with the previous years. We're still working on a variety of projects. Some are new and some are still to be completed for a variety of reasons, no fault of our own, but just in the challenges that in working both with the city and in the middle of one of the busiest central business districts in the world. Just as a reminder, we represent the area that has irregular boundaries, runs from the south at 35th Street to the north at 54th Street, from 2nd Avenue to 5th Avenue.
High red district.
It's quite large, actually,
I was going to say a high
geographically.
red district. God, I'm
Yes,
teasing
yes,
you.
yes. And actually, as an aside, really the centerpiece of the discussion that has been ongoing for the last couple of years about the rezoning of East Midtown. So we have been actively involved in those discussions as a bid, and look forward to whatever the future holds for hopefully a proposal that we'll see at some point this year, if not early in the next year. So that's sort of an overview. Obviously, as you know, we have about 145 employees. The majority of them are in our field operations, which represents our sanitation and our public safety and our tourism program staff. It's a 7-day-a-week operation, as you know, as we provide supplemental sanitation, public safety services to the neighborhood and a variety of other quality of life initiatives. But as you know, too, and probably one of the primary reasons we're here is that we also have uniquely a very large capital projects and maintenance division. As you know, many of the assets in our neighborhood, from our streetlights to our news boxes to our granite corners to even our trash receptacles and benches, are owned by us and have been purchased by us through the issuance of the debt that we keep an eye on. As a reminder to you, in fiscal 14, we refunded, with the last opportunity we had to refund, the bonds, and in 14, which obviously you have the comparison years in these financials, you saw some of the impact of that in 14, but clearly you saw the full impact of it in this reporting year. The bonds will be paid off in 2022, which actually is hard to imagine is actually in sight. So as we work on the fiscal 17 budget now, so it's, in another 5 to 5.5 years, the bonds will be paid off, and we are just now in a process of paying the bills every year and waiting for the end to come.
I remember, I think I told you I worked when I retired from the city part-time at the MTA.
Yes, I
They
recall.
were redoing Grand Central, Grand Central Terminal.
Yes.
They did a beautiful job.
Yes, they did. We obviously are
The
not.
nuts who tore down Penn Station to
yes.
build the garden, it's terrible. So, thank
Well-
God there were people who, thought artistically they were going to tear down Grand Central Terminal too.
Correct.
Would have
And
been
I guess
tragic.
Jackie O and
Yes.
her advocacy certainly is part of the legacy of why Grand Central still exists. I know that certainly we, as an organization, and the board members, the majority of whom are still founding, our existing board members are even more, the supermajority of the board are founding board members of the bid, are very proud of the focus that they helped draw to this Midtown area and the neighborhood around Grand Central. The MTA did an amazing job at really creating sort of a renaissance, and the demand for business in the terminal, though we don't obviously control that aspect of the terminal's operations, but really has changed the people's view, and as we call it now, it's a destination, it's not just a transit hub. People come there to be there, not just because they need to use the train in any way. They come and they eat and they shop, and it's pretty exciting.
Somebody who was taken there by his father.
Yes.
A long time ago for a clam pan roast. I was taken there a couple of weeks ago. It's still damn good.
It's still good. My grandmother is 102 and a half. She was born when Grand Central opened. And so she has this, she loves that I work in this area. And she would tell me stories, which is interesting, about how when she went to Grand Central, because she lived upstate for a while, she would have to get dressed in a dress and a hat and her gloves as a young girl. Obviously, that's not what we see all the time in Grand Central now, but there's always hope. So.
It's a beautiful terminal. And the light show they have every Christmas is something to see. They
Yes,
do
and the holiday fair and the things that they do, they really have done a very good job, and we help promote these events and work with them on to
Sure.
create a family, a place where people can go, whether they're alone or with 10 people or bring visitors from out of town. I mean, it really is a destination for people. Our tourism staff, interacts with, hundreds of thousands of people each year, and one of the top places to visit, even for no reason, is Grand Central, because people want to see it now. And we are spending some time, and we discussed this in the past, part of our capital program over the years has been to focus on Grand Central, because it is sort of the heart, the centerpiece of the district. So our rooftop lighting program, which we've spent the last several years in upgrading to LED, which has not only been better and more energy efficient, but has also saved us so much money in the program. We are working as part of the centennial celebration, although now we're 2.5 years in. But the reality is we are completing, hopefully by this summer, we will be completed with a major signage and lighting program on the Park Avenue Viaduct that sort of is just over Grand Central and goes around, historic lighting redesign and LED lighting and signage. So really, so much of the neighborhood and the board's support goes to really paying attention to this iconic building that really we're so lucky to still have.
When you're a new driver, as I was, going through that viaduct was a little
Yeah.
tight. It was a good experience.
Yeah, I don't think that experience has changed very much for
No,
people.
it
but
has. An old
we are
viaduct.
doing some investigation on lighting it, although it is not our responsibility, so to speak. But we are sharing information with the parties that potentially can do something about lighting it a little bit better. Yes, we agree.
Okay. No, financially, what was I going to say? I think everything looks very similar to the previous year, and it's been a good year. And your employees are part-timers or full-timers?
No, well, full-time hourly employees, absent excluding the managerial staff, which are all full-time, our employees are also unionized employees. So we have 3 different unions for each of the divisions that I described, and their agreements are collectively bargained, as is typical.
Okay.
But they are employees. We don't contract that service out. So our sanitation sweepers and cleaners are our employees, and same for our public safety officers and our tourist greeters.
I was going to ask you, I think I have in the past, what are your social services?
Okay, so our social services involve our contribution to a social service provider. Okay. So we are working with the former Common Ground, which is now known as Breaking Ground. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the organization. It is one that works as well with the city. We don't do social service programming directly in the bid. Those of you who will recall many years ago, there was controversy that involved the bid's involvement directly in social services. So the better option was to contract that service out, so to speak, or it's not really contracting a service out, it's just actually working with a contractor to provide services in the neighborhood that we otherwise would not perform, but we need. And they are out all week. They work with our staff as well. They're trained, obviously, and, we learn a lot about those in need. Obviously, this issue is a huge one for the city, for cities all over the country, and New York certainly, and in an area like Midtown where there are so many people and so many generous people, it is a location for people to find their place, and so we do what we can to help them and refer them. We know from our reporting from the social service provider that we've had much success in housing people who need it, and getting services for those who have different needs, because every category is completely different for the people who are in the street, and each needs a very specialized way of dealing with that. And we do our best to play a role in supporting the city and in trying to build a better quality of life for those people.
The terminal is closed like from about 1 to 5 or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's 2
2:30 to 5.
to 5.
2:30 to 5.
Yes.
That
Most
helps.
people don't know that. But yes, it's an interesting
Everybody has moved out.
trivia
Oh,
fact.
it's-
Yes.
That helps a little
I never tried
bit.
it that hour.
No,
Yeah,
no,
I don't either.
You'd be surprised with the commuters. It's a busy station.
Well, you know, it's interesting, although we understand all the reasons, you know, why, but it is interesting that over the last almost 2 decades, that I'm there, you know, the neighborhood has changed so dramatically from the typical 9 to 5 neighborhood that people thought of Midtown as. You can't, you know, it was the central business district. You got off the train, you went in your building, maybe you came out for lunch, maybe you ordered in, and then you got back on your train and you went home. You know, the neighborhood, the lounges, the restaurants, the entertainment venues, everything has changed so much, and even people's work hours have changed dramatically. So there are businesses where the building would be dark, you know, now all through the night, there are different floors with the tech industry, there were people working 3 o'clock in the morning, the financial services industry, so it's changed. So, you know, maybe at some point, that will be revisited in terms of what are the proper hours, but we do know that a lot of maintenance and other things go on during the evening in Grand Central that are important for them to do.
And the rezoning, you think will bring in more residential, or you don't have any?
Well, I'll say this. I don't think residential is the direction the rezoning is going. I think the focus for the task force that was led by Manhattan Borough President and Councilman Gorodnick as the council representative for East Midtown was to really focus on keeping this the world central business district. So I think what we will see, although it's hard to say, although I did sit on the working group that participated in this, is that it is not a residentially focused proposal, or at least the guidelines are not. The report was issued back in November from the working group and was submitted to this Department of City Planning, which was the plan. And now it's up to City Planning to review and to sort of put together in some text that could ultimately and will ultimately go through ULURP and get, you know, seek the input from the public as any application for land use that would seek zoning changes and have ULURP applied to it.
Very good. I remember when they were redoing the terminal, we used to say at the MTA, 500,000 commuters go through and still they're working around it, and it was worked.
Yes.
It's an astounding thing. It worked.
Yes.
It worked, yeah. Well, they did great. Is there any questions on the financials? I think they're an excellent set.
Thank you so much.
Scotty, and as always, and if there's,
Yes.
thank you for your presentation. It's always good to see you, sir.
Thank you. It
All
was
the
always
best.
good to see you too. Enjoy.
They're one of the best bids we got. Yeah, they do great. Okay, the next thing is the Educational Construction Fund. They're coming in. Oh, Camille is getting them.
34th Street.
How are you? That's Mr. Khan, isn't it? Is that Mr. Khan?
What's next?
The Educational Construction Fund.
Can't believe it. And there's gonna be
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I wonder what her start date is.
Fortunately for me, they came across.
He was a finance commissioner at one time. He was, Cirillo.
I always picked the wrong chair.
Yeah, he was angry. He beat him and had both bills, the guy from 34. This made a fortune, so made a change. He was critical of that. Things get changed. Could you introduce yourselves, everybody, please?
Sure.
Hi, how are you today? Jennifer Maldonado. I'm the Executive Director of the Educational Construction Fund.
Cynthia Wong, Director of Finance, Educational Construction Fund.
Jim Filipinivo, I'm from the outside auditors, Israel of Stratton.
Okay,
Patrick Yagjan, also from Israel Off.
from the outside auditors. Did you want to make a little statement using the
Sure.
MD&A? Go ahead.
Very quickly, we are very happy to be here. We've met before you on various occasions to talk to you about the financial condition of ECF. We're doing very well this year. We've had some ups and downs over the past few years, which the auditors can speak to, but we've continued to stay revenue neutral or gain revenues over the last few years. I am very happy to announce that just this morning, we signed a term sheet for our newest project, which will obviously bring sufficient revenues and continued revenues to ECF, and we're looking at 2 new projects for the coming year. So we're very
What
happy.
is the new project?
We are going to ask to keep that private right now. The mayor has not announced that. Once the mayor announces it, we
Okay,
can give more
I
information.
understand.
We just signed that term sheet this morning for this project.
Of course.
So with that, I will have our auditors discuss the condition of ECF and then take any questions that you may have.
Okay, to review the financial statements, I guess the first thing is there was a restatement in 2015 of some of the 2014 numbers, so we just want to discuss why that took place. The biggest thing was there was a due from developer, and that resulted from costs, I think they go back about 5 years, that it was because of changes in architectural plans, and the costs were originally capitalized as part of the buildings. And then I think in fiscal year 2014, an agreement was made with the developer that the developer would reimburse the fund. And ultimately, the amount became approximately $3 million. So that $3 million moved from money that was included in the buildings to now it's a receivable due from developer on the financial statements. And there's also accrued interest on that of just under $500,000. And then the other restatement was a pension accrual because of GASB 68.
Everybody had to do that, yeah.
Right. So the net effect on the net position was about $421,000 increase because of these changes for the prior year, 2014. There was also, the revenues went up. Well, the overall revenues went down, but the prior year there was $7 million had come in because of the extension of the lease at 57th Street. So that was a one-time event. Aside from that, the revenues increased this past year, 2015, by about $4.5 million. Overall capital assets decreased because of depreciation expense, and there was also a construction refund receivable from a prior overpayment of about $350,000. So that became a receivable instead of, part of the property account.
I didn't understand that. You have a refund receivable, I understand that.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 18, that's what you just referred to. You recorded a construction refund receivable from the developer of $352,000 to refund. So how does the receivable refund something? Because the receivable would be money you get, and if you're refunding it, it's money you paid out.
Well, they got it. It was, at the end of the year, it was receivable to the fund from the construction company, from a
Right.
prior overpayment. And they have since received that $350,000.
I'm still not following you.
We overpaid.
Saw that.
Okay, so then they owed it back to us.
Right.
They actually paid it in fiscal year 16, but we were showing it.
You overpaid them and they owed you some money.
Exactly.
I think that was,
Yeah.
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
I don't think the disclosure is particularly clear.
Michelle, you got to talk up.
I don't think the disclosure is particularly clear. I also stumbled on it when I was reviewing this. It didn't make sense to me.
Okay, we can look at that.
Take a look at the
Right
language.
back to it.
Yeah,
I'll give you some more stuff to finish up.
go ahead.
The current liabilities had a big increase because the fund paid, I believe it was 23 million of the 2005 bonds. So that was classified as a current liability at June of 2015. The payment was made on October 1st, 2015.
That's usually utilizing our surplus. We have an excess surplus that we keep from our rental and tax equivalency, and we were able to use that surplus to pay down our bonds, our 2005A bonds.
We
So
did
that's what.
a bond redemption, and by doing that, we were able to save the $6 million of interest payments that would have been due going forward.
And I think that really covers kind of the, the variances from year to year in the financial statement.
I was very pleased to see on page 7 where you list your completed projects. There was a time you didn't do it, looked like you didn't do anything.
Yes.
Meanwhile, you're managing many of these and
Correct.
collecting payments and whatnot, so I think that's a plus.
Correct.
Now, you sold Murray Bertram High School was sold, or you?
Correct.
So you're no longer responsible for that?
No, we are no longer responsible for
No,
Murray
it
Bertram.
doesn't bring any income? Nothing?
Does not. Neither does Norman Thomas.
I'm sorry?
Neither does Norman Thomas, which we also sold in 2004.
They were nice properties.
They were very nice properties and generated about $5 million in revenue. So we're hoping that, and we'll see real revenue jumps in 2 of our projects, our most recent projects, at East 91st Street and East 57th Street in the coming years, that will generate a tremendous profit, quite honestly, over the next few years.
Great. They were great.
Yes,
yeah.
they were very helpful.
I was struck by one thing on the list here, and that is that there's so few projects outside of Manhattan. The demographic is the availability of property outside Manhattan, such, or there's no use for commercial development, or what?
I think it's availability, but it's also real estate value. These projects have to fund themselves. So we are actually right now looking at 2 projects in Brooklyn and 1 project on Long Island City as well. We'd like to do more projects in the Bronx and Staten Island. There's some issues with zoning, and there's issues, again, obviously, with real estate prices. But those are areas that we're continuing to look at as well. And working with EDC and the city to hopefully do some projects that will have more affordable housing. Our newest project, which we can't really disclose right now, has a large affordability component in it that will help with meeting the mayor's goals. That's the project I can't talk to you about, but but I'm telling you about anyway.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I guess the other thing, in your notes, which are quite complete, you talk about the crane accident,
Correct.
which happened in relation to which project?
East 91st Street. So we're,
And you have no legal,
none whatsoever now.
it is the contractor?
Correct. It's the contractor and the subcontractors that are still negotiating with the
Plaintiffs.
families of those
Of the
victims.
victims, yeah.
Correct.
They had adequate insurance coverage.
I'm sorry?
Correct. They had adequate insurance, yes. But as those things are wont to do, they're continuing to negotiate the amount.
Speaks well for your program that you made sure that they had that in place.
Yes. It's very expensive to them, but we feel it's very, very necessary, unfortunately, for instances such as this. We carry sufficient insurance on our own, so.
And I guess you have people who make sure that the contractors have adequate insurance.
Oh, correct. I mean, that's part of any agreement that's
Yeah.
struck with the developer, is that they have an overabundance of insurance, probably more than most development projects, again, because of the nature of the location of the school near the residential properties.
And your employees are members of the state retirement system?
Correct. We have 3 employees, myself, Cynthia that sits here, and 1 other employee.
That are members of the state
Correct. We are a state public authority.
Sorry, yeah,
Correct.
yeah. So, Michelle, why do we include them in the component units? Because we're responsible for some of their debt, I think, right?
And because we are so closely affiliated with them, we
Yeah.
share some staff
They'd-
and resources with the Department of Education.
Myself, I'm the only shared sort of employee with it.
Right, but you share the facilities.
Yeah.
and-
Correct, correct. I am located at the Tweed office building, and Cynthia is at SCA.
And the city has full control of their board.
Yeah, no, I,
Our board, yes,
Yes.
they do.
That's kind of plain in the
Yes,
document.
that's
I
very
have a
true.
couple of minor questions.
Sure.
You state in footnote 2 that the fund's policy to invest.
Page?
Page 18, idle cash balances. A lot of these things talk about where it goes, rather than just a statement. A number of the disclosures and footnotes are cash balances are limited, investments are limited by something or other. Right?
Say it again.
A lot of these ordinances, the disclosures and the footnotes say where cash balances are invested based upon criteria. This one is blind that way. I don't care. I just point that out. It's a different form of disclosure.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the
It's
question?
on page 18, footnote 2, first paragraph on the page. The last sentence is the fund's policy to invest idle cash balances. I'm accustomed to seeing in accordance with state regulation. It's in the back, isn't it? So,
Footnote 3 has much more detail around.
I know, so that's why I think you need a cross-reference.
We should
You
cross-reference.
just want that cross-reference?
yeah, to say, see footnote 3, okay.
Yeah. Then, if you don't mind getting a little nitpicking, the last sentence on page 19 is mystified me. Maximum lump sum sick leave payment at termination is 100 days. That's not the payment.
That's the lump sum
Calculation.
payment,
That's
the calculation.
So, from a grammatical point of view, the sick leave payment is not 100 days.
Okay.
Sorry.
Maybe say based on,
Value of.
Okay.
I got some more other little things I'll give you. You can play with the grammar, but there's another one which I would like to address to the accountants, the difference between impact and material impact.
What page are we looking
I'm
at?
sorry, 21. You talk about the new accounting statements. Some are material impact and some are just impact. What's the reason for the difference? Oversight.
where he's talking about what they've adopted and the GASMEs, is that it?
Yeah, some say that did not have an impact, and others said did not have material impact. I'm trying to understand the difference.
No, there shouldn't be. It
Shouldn't
should be the
be,
same.
should be an
so.
impact, all right.
Well, no, I mean, there are some that just don't apply.
That's
at
different.
all. So that's no impact.
Well, to say it doesn't apply is one thing. To say it has no impact, it doesn't have a material impact.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, I stand.
I'm just not accustomed to that kind of difference. in
To
disclosure.
sharpen the language a little bit, okay.
And then, on,
21.
I'll give you some more, just for fun. In footnote 3 on page 22, it says in the first line, not required for immediate use of disbursement. There is some word that's not right there,
Where are we? 3?
or disbursement.
Page 22, footnote 3, first sentence.
First sentence, all right, I'll leave you alone with that one. Then, there's an enormous amount of money that's collateralized at the banks. Who watches the margin on that?
You mean on page 23?
22. There's $444 million collateralized with securities. Who watches to be sure that the securities that are put up as collateral represent adequate margin?
Oh, yes, that's fair enough. That's part of your duties, ma'am?
Yes, it is. She's
All right,
she's
yeah.
going to answer it.
So just as a business matter, somebody's watching
Yes,
that.
so that is part of my duties as the Director of Finance to be watching that. In addition, for the bonds, where we have to have certain bond reserves, we have a bond trustee.
Well, okay. And again, I'm interested in, on page 23, you have
The custodial credit.
insured less than the insurable amount. Your insured balance is of $33,000. You can go up to $250,000. Is there a reason why you don't test that limit?
Sorry, what page is that? 23?
23, you're insured by up to $250,000 in account, and yet you only have 23,000 in an account. So it's trivial, but you could move something into the insured account without real cost.
Again, this is at a point in time on June 30th.
That's a
so-
point, yeah, I figured that, yeah.
Now, I'm also, you got some language problems in the next one, custodial credit risk. Custodial credit risk with deposits exists when, in the event of a failure, depository financial, the government may be unable to recover deposits. The government? Why are you referring to yourself as a government?
No, it's,
I don't think, you look at the language there.
look at it, you may want to cross it out.
Something.
Where are we?
The word government,
Well, I don't know, it's,
Where are we here?
A government entity?
something. And I'll give you this thing, there's some other little, I want to get.
either entity or New York City Education Research.
Okay, yeah, we'll just put an entity.
Either the fund or entity.
Would entities
Speaking about
suffice?
percentage.
Okay,
It's just speaking in
we'll just
general.
change it, we'll just change
Yeah,
it.
but entity's general too.
It's fine.
Yeah.
We'll just, it's fine.
Get for reading.
You don't need to make it so generic, you could say ECF.
ECF, oh, the fund, yeah.
Yeah.
On page 24, where you say one school building was sold in 2012, that was Bertram?
That was
Or Norman Thomas.
That was Norman
No,
Thomas.
but- So when did you sell Bertram? After or before?
2007.
2007, okay. The way you list all the schools, you ought to footnote that. You know, put a footnote next to the two of them, just,
That's a good idea, we'll do that.
who bought Norman Thomas? Because you had state, do you know? You had even state officers in that building, I believe. Maybe not, or it doesn't,
To be honest, I do not recall who the purchaser was.
huge building.
I think it was sold, quite honestly, to the residents themselves, the residential tower themselves. I'm
Oh,
almost.
made like
I-
a-
Would have been a
I-
condo.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
I'm almost sure it's.
You had
it's-
state officers, you had everything there.
Yeah, I'm almost sure that that was the case. I'm 98% sure that that was the case. Because they've emailed me recently, so yes.
Okay.
Give you this if you want some little bits and bits.
Mr.
Pardon?
Khan, did you have any questions? All right, I want to thank you for coming. I think the statements are fine. Continue the good work and
Thank
keep
you.
signing up projects.
Yes, we're looking forward to coming back next year with more good news.
Okay.
You know, I think that you were entitled to take a victory lap in your disclosure.
Next year,
No,
next
but
year,
I mean, in the document itself,
next year.
in the MD&A, you might conceivably,
I think next year we will be touting lots of good things that we've done in this year, 2015, so,
I mean, just even in the past, it
yes,
represents something very good in the city.
yes. I think it's a great thing for the city, and we need to do more. We need to do more,
Yeah.
and
little
throughout the boroughs. Exactly.
Bronx guy.
I am as well. I'm a Bronx gal myself. Love to do something there, so. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
See you next year.
I'm gonna go out and type.
Nah. They finally listed the projects. It looks like they're doing nothing. Where's the projects? Used to have They used to have someone who headed that agency. You couldn't get any information from him. And maybe Michelle, I don't know if she would remember him. I forget his name. They were in Brooklyn at Powers at that time. Okay, the next agency we have is the School Construction Authority. Could you introduce yourselves quickly?
Sure. My name's Marianne Egri. I am the Vice President of Finance and Information Technology at the School Construction Authority. And with me is John Hepburn, the Controller of the School Construction Authority. And a new member of our team, Yi-Wen Wang, is our new Director of Accounting. And also, we have switched auditors this year, so we have Mark Paneth. I think you might know the person
we
sitting
know.
there a little bit. And next to him is Dan McElwee. So that's our team.
Do you have a little statement, Ms. Avery, that you want?
Yes, very short.
Okay.
So as you know, we have 5-year plans. So fiscal year 2015 was the first year of our 6th 5-year plan. The total appropriation of this plan is $13.5 billion. And in 2015, we committed $2.8 billion, which included $489 million for 38 new schools, and also $1.2 billion for 597 capital improvement projects. In 2015, we opened 52 new schools, which also included lots of pre-K, and we created 14,666 seats. Right now, for 2016, we have 39 new schools that will be opening, and that will be a total of 5,520 seats. And currently in construction, we've got 51 new schools and 572 capital improvement projects. So we're busy. So that's it.
The new schools are new construction.
Yeah, well, there's new or additions, and also our
Additions to schools, like
right, and
annexes?
pre-K, also pre-K facilities.
I'm sorry?
Pre-K, pre-kindergarten facilities
Okay.
are also counted as new schools.
I think it might be helpful at some point to talk about the number of desks compared to the total number, so that the percentage increase is somehow something you would like to talk about. I don't care, I just raised
The number of seats compared to what?
what percentage increase in seats you have affected.
We do that. When we're giving plan presentations, we certainly do that, the number of, yeah.
I just wonder if it's a matter of public relations, whether you want to put it in.
We do present it that way, yeah.
In 2015, we went out and did a proposal for new auditors, and we hired Mark Paneth. So you'll notice that in our financial statements, they are significantly different than in prior years. That was a discussion with ourselves and Mr. Ruppel in terms of his feelings towards this, and so that we implemented the changes this year.
I guess capitalized, right, in your rate, because everything is capital related, your salaries, your administrative, everything.
Yes.
There's no expense budget funds at all. It's all capital.
Correct.
I think that's right. And the 5-year plan would be 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19?
Right.
I see. I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the largest components of the capital budget, I don't remember, is the Department of Education, right? Yeah, I think it's big. I think it's very big. I'm thinking, I think it's got to be the biggest. There's a lot of other big projects, but water is coming down a little bit, and many of the schools are old, and I guess they have to be replaced, and safety and whatnot, yeah. All right. I had a question here. Warren, I guess when you prepare these statements, you do them on the entity-wide basis, and then you also show it on the governmental fund basis. and reconcile the two.
Right.
Yeah.
If you remember in the past, the SAA statements used to have one table that had, you know, one column for adjustments that tried to do the government-wide and the
Yeah, I
fund
think
on the
this
same
is much
page.
better.
This was more traditional.
Yeah, I think it's, and it's,
Yeah.
it's more descriptive, I think, than the other way.
I would say that in reading through the MD&A, because of the fund versus government-wide, it seemed a bit repetitive. And I wonder if it would make sense to have some cross-referencing rather than repeating the same language throughout.
I have one that I didn't understand. It shows my lack of accounting training. On the results of operation, page 4, in 2015, the negative pension expense. I didn't understand what that's telling me. Somebody can explain it. Given the fact that we're so far underfunded that it's...
Maybe I can attempt that. The way that pensions are measured in accordance with accounting standards require a great deal of estimation.
Yeah.
And as estimates change, there are fluctuations in the pension liabilities.
But how does it ever turn into a situation in which
So
pension expense turns into an asset?
So one of the things that happens in pension expense is you amortize into pension expense certain items that get deferred. So for example, if you have very large investment gains, right, in 1 year, you spread those out over various years and it offsets the pension expense, and it could in some cases get you to a negative amount.
Okay, just I guess I've never seen that, so. Okay, Warren, the other thing you might think about is my old bête noire, which is the capital T. You're inconsistent.
I thought we had that nailed down.
You're way inconsistent. I'll give it to you. That's just for fun. But there's something else here.
I had one that was a negative. On page 11 on your statement of activities, your capital projects are a negative.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a reallocation of the employer contributions to pension expense offset against the estimate from the Office of the Actuary.
And you showed it in capital projects.
Actually, we take all of our expenditures and we capitalize
Okay,
it into
okay.
construction projects. We had to pull that out.
Michelle,
A negative expense could almost be a revenue. I'm teasing you, but you could show it as a revenue. You could.
It has the same impact.
Yeah, it has the same effect.
But because the cause is different, we continue to classify it.
Yeah, when we started to do cash flows in the city on a regular basis, I think we used to say a negative use could be a source and vice versa, but all right, that's the old days.
Yeah, from a budget perspective, it is.
Yeah.
I think Michelle's point is on top of page 7 and on top of page 9, you have the same paragraphs.
Yeah, there are a lot of them.
Right, but the cash is held temporarily by the authority for capital project expenditures. This, you're not, well, we go back to the prior sentence. The cash is secured through J.P. Morgan Chase. What is that? You collateralized it?
We collateralize it.
Well, wouldn't it be better to say that? Because cash is secured, so it sounds like it came from J.P. Morgan Chase. You're talking about collateralization?
Yeah, that's collateral.
Yes.
I think that would be a better way to describe this.
I've asked you in the past, I think, about change orders. The major contractor is charged with the responsibility of kind of riding herd on the change orders. My language may be stupid, but I think you know where I'm getting to.
Right, so we have one contractor, because we're exempt from the Wicks law, so we have one contractor that it bids the whole job.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
and
nice that you're exempt from that crazy law.
yes, it has to be renewed every so often, but so far, it's continued to be renewed.
So he's responsible.
Yes.
The firm is responsible
Yep.
for sitting. Because that can be very costly. And again, you have people out in the field inspecting.
Right, so we have a large staff of construction management, an in-house construction management team that is in charge of overseeing all the work that's
Overseeing
going
the
on in the field.
construction
Yeah.
projects. And then somewhere in the statements, you mentioned the fact that there is some old Department of Education employees that you use to do some smaller projects. Is that it?
Yes, so there are the skilled trades at the Department of Education that do some capital work, and so we fund that work because we have all the capital money that is the
Okay,
Department of Education.
so you use them. Why not? It's more efficient, I guess.
For smaller
For
types
smaller
of jobs,
stuff,
right?
yeah.
Right.
Couple of other minor things. I ask this every time, every organization, who watches the margin on the secured accounts? Where your collateral
They
secured?
have to.
We do, we monitor it on a monthly basis.
Fine.
To make sure that we have enough, we're covered. If we see a problem, then we pull a contract to it.
Get it. Now, then, if I may, on page 21, in fair value measurement, there's a disconnect there, I think. Level 3 inputs, I understand. And then it says the authority did not hold the investments measured at fair value. Well, all of this measured at fair value. Are you saying you didn't have any level 3?
No, there was no investments reported at fair value for 2005, but they did have investments for 2014. So since the statements are comparable, that's why there's just, the investments they had at 2014 were level 1. It's in the following paragraph.
No, but my point is that all the investments are at fair value. It's only a question of how you calculate what fair value is.
Correct.
So you say the authority did not hold the investments measured at fair value. It had some. Level 1 is fair value, isn't it?
Yeah, but it didn't report, if you look at investments on the balance sheet, it's all sitting in cash.
No, okay, I should have gone back.
All right.
Thanks, Ron. I also noticed your insurance cost, am I right, $200 million? How does that compare to the value of what you're doing? Do you ever look at that? You must.
Yes. That's how we actually determine the insurance cost, based on the construction value of work that we're performing. Insurance in New York, as everyone knows, is extremely expensive.
I'm just impressed. If I might, one more thing about the numbers. On page 26, you used, I'm not sure I understand, the idea the inflation is 1.5, using a long-term assumption of 2.5. If the cost, that's...
He's not doing, well, I'm sorry.
These are actually the numbers that are coming from...
From the actuaries, so whatever.
I understand that, but I'm trying to understand how, if you assume a CPI rate increase of 2.5, you can then settle in to have a lower rate for inflation.
Now, this is assuming that there is a market rate, right, that's 4%. The real interest rate is the full rate less the inflation assumption. This is just telling you that of that overall percent, a portion of it is just the inflation assessment, the inflation estimate, and the remainder is the real interest assumption that the actuaries use.
So as long as you're answering that, look at the prior two lines up, 7% per annum, net investment, net of investment expenses.
This again, this came
So
from
they're
the...
expecting that they would
No, I'm just saying, isn't there a word missing?
net of. Yes, you are correct.
Shoot.
Sorry.
How long has the Educational Construction Fund, I'm sorry, has the Schools Construction Authority been in business?
So we were created by legislation that was passed in December of 1988, and we became operational in 1989.
1989.
Yeah. So 26 years, over 26 years.
What?
Right, on your right.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, so
How much, you have on page 5, the money that you spent with regards to damage from Superstorm Sandy. How much are you seeking in reimbursements from the federal government? So it's 90%. I mean, ultimately, we, our total projects that we have underway is about $620 million. And we're expecting to get 90% of that back, so somewhere around $560 million. So that is all underway. All those, the projects are basically in construction. And we have been getting money back already from the state. We have a claims process underway, and we're working with them directly and getting money back. So you're petitioning the state, and the state's working with FEMA to get the funds back? That's how it works. Right. Okay. And so right now it's saying you spent, I guess, $120 million over the past couple of years? And so what's the delay? What's the lag process between submission and reimbursement? It depends. I mean, they've got a team reviewing our payment requests right now. So basically, we had a large volume of our projects go into construction at the end of the last fiscal year. So right now, everything is active in construction, and basically, they have given us $106 million. They've reimbursed us $106 million, and there's $116 pending that they're in the process of reviewing. So basically, as the payment requests come in, we put all the documentation together and send it up to the state. So we're trying to do it on a real-time basis, and then they are reviewing them.
These are FEMA reimbursements?
Yeah, but they get processed through the state.
It's also worth noting, too, that you cannot get reimbursed until a PW is obligated, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the work hasn't yet started. So sometimes citywide, there's a delay in reimbursement from FEMA, the state, because FEMA is still working with the state and the city to finalize the PW to obligate it.
Okay. So is there a cash flow hole here? When we incur the expense, have to pay the contractor because he or she has got to get it done. And when you get paid,
Well, it's not coming directly to us, it's going to the cities.
Well, there's a delay between the expenditure and the reimbursement.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's a reimbursement-based grant, so we have to spend in order to be reimbursed.
And with interest rates where they are, it's not so bad. And I think it'd be useful to have a little more clarification in that section, just so that we can understand how that money, maybe the timeline and how that money is being spent. Oh, and another question, with regards to environmental issues, I mean, we had these issues with NYCHA with regards to mold. And perhaps I missed this, but under environmental, would mold be under the considerations of remediation?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And has there been a lot, I mean, because of the storm, has there been a lot of mold remediation going on? No.
Not really.
Okay. I mean, that's good to hear, I mean, because we know many children have faced severe asthma and other chronic health issues because of mold in public housing, so didn't know if that was a problem within the schools.
Yeah, no, it has not been.
Not for the Sandy projects.
Okay.
If I might, on the management letter, generally the response is that construction authority agrees with every one of the recommendations.
Right.
And then they go on to a paragraph or so explaining how they're going to follow up. I was wondering how comfortable the auditors were with the detail of how they're going to implement those recommendations.
I have, I think the recommendations, just about all were agreed with, and, I think most of the responses have a timeline laid out.
The questions are comfortable with what you've seen so far.
Yeah, because I think the comments were, I'll say, well received, and they recognized that those were things that they had on their agenda. There's there's an Oracle upgrade going on, there's other things that may delay some of the timing of some of the things, but, for the most part, I'm comfortable they'd address them, yeah.
And I just want to echo that, I mean, particularly the first comment about the
the lack of the audit committee oversight. You know, the reforms, my recollection was, went into effect in 2009, 2010, as far as the Public Authorities Reform Act. I think it would have been more useful to have a greater explanation as to what is being done to remedy that, and what's the time frame to bring in those measures that are being recommended.
Also a very pregnant statement to say the members resigned in the public company sector. That calls for comment.
Well, change of administration, right?
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Is somebody going to answer Mr. Collins' question?
I thought he was just asking for more detailed explanation.
Oh,
Going forward when we are writing up the management's response.
Right, but also if you have a timeline in place, or what steps are being taken to address the recommendation that was made.
Well, we've been trying to identify audit committee members, and then they get, you know, presenting them to the city officials. That a timeline would be as soon as possible, but obviously it hasn't
being worked
happened
on.
yet.
Okay.
Yeah, the timeline is as soon as possible.
I was just going to ask you, what is the nature of the pollution remediation? Is it, what is it, when I say the nature, what kind of problems have to be remediated? Are they so broad that
It's asbestos, PCBs that were a problem, mold,
mold is one?
lead paint.
Okay.
Okay. If a problem.
So
is
the lead paint
identified-
would be in some of the older schools, not in yours?
Yeah, and hazardous remediation if it's sometimes a site that we acquire that needs to be remediated, so
I
it could be
see,
that
I
as
see,
well.
okay.
Warren, my usual comment. You have in your last paragraph of the letter that this is only for the group that we don't consist of.
Yeah, that's all.
So you might consider.
We don't,
I defer to my colleague on the right, but that doesn't work, Warren.
Yeah, no, but, you know, we'd like to stick with the language that the ACPA provides for this letter, so.
Post in every accounting firm that comes here with that restricted.
Well,
language.
government auditing standards, you did, you know, that it's a explanation of the purpose of on those reports. So you've gotten somewhere on those.
Yeah, I've got a little bit, but
Yep.
You're missing a couple of words, I'll give you that.
if there are no other questions on the statements, then maybe we should turn to the management letter, because there's a number of comments. Let me get my glasses again. They're kind of small of print. So you're trying to get an audit committee together?
Yes, we are.
It's not easy.
It's not easy,
No.
right? Trustees, too. We're trying to get some new
And
trustees.
where would they have to go, to Long Island City, where you are? Is that it?
Yeah, maybe that's the problem.
I was going to say.
I tell you, when we created the audit committee for the Board of Ed, way back when I did it with the then chancellor, we had them in my office in Manhattan, and it was one of the drawing cards that people
Yeah,
would
otherwise-
come instead of going out to Brooklyn.
Would you let them use your office? I couldn't resist.
And beverages.
No, I'm serious. If you ask, I might be able to do it.
You're in a very old building, right? There used to be a Pan Am it used to have a Pan Am.
No, we're, used to be the old Chiclets building. It was then the IDC Center.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, right next to LaGuardia Community College.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you subject to all the open meeting law requirements for your trustees and?
Whatever public, for.
Oh, yeah, that's
whatever
right. You're
is
right
for
near
public
LaGuardia,
authorities.
yeah.
Yes.
That would be a problem, because we don't like a lot of people breaking through.
Yeah.
Transparency.
Okay,
seriously, you're
on comment 2, I think they agree with the recommendation. You're developing a new closed system.
Started that process of developing the
Okay.
process. You know, some of it was actually due to the learning curve of the new auditors and.
Okay, I could understand that, yeah.
On page 4, the discussion of your insurance program, Can you just give me a sense of what the dollar volume of claims is each year? I don't have kind of the scope.
Dollar value is,
There.
could be in the 100 millions.
You're talking about comment 4, Michelle? Yeah.
Number 5, actually.
5.
Oh, 5, I thought it was.
Page 4.
I gather from 4 that it's kind of a seat of the pants estimate. I don't mean to be unkind, for construction in progress. You'd like something a little firmer, I think, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I think whatever, it'd be better to have a more readily generated report that said, okay, here's the construction in progress balance, here's all the schools it relates to. And then that way you could be sure that there's nothing that's hanging out in that balance that should have been transferred.
No, that's fine, that's fine. They're agreeing with all your so far with all your
Like this one,
Okay.
Yeah, but it does turn over, we try to give a sense, it does turn over fairly rapidly, so, you know, if there are some costs stuck there, then they're, not gonna be material.
And again, from a technical standpoint, you have your own architects and engineers that do the design and whatnot?
Right, so we have an architecture and engineering staff, and we also use external consultants, so it's a combination.
And the Department of Education has to approve the designs of some of the schools, or not necessarily, or?
No, I mean, we work with subject matter experts in the DOE, so let's say if it's a science lab and they have new specs or something like that, that's how we work with them.
Mark, I had a question for you. Through your firm, with Tailored Technologies, in the analysis of the network security, we live in an age of hacking. You know, the CIA director's email was hacked. What tests have any tests been conducted as far as the security of the networks and the systems beyond, you know, passwords and some of these operational systems recommendations that you made?
Well, I mean, they only reported here things that they found that they had a recommendation or you know, an issue with.
Right.
So there's no comment here relative to
those other issues. There's nothing.
Right. But understand that we do the technology review as part of enabling us as the auditors to have comfort with the systems. This is not a full-blown technology audit that's done for other purposes.
You have special information technology personnel in the firm, too.
Right. Yeah. They, you know, it's identified here as Tailored Technologies, but Tailored Technologies is a wholly owned subsidiary of Marks Paneth, so it's the same.
But we do have just internal auditors. We use Ernst & Young as our internal audit function, and they do quite a bit of IT audits to make sure that everything is, yeah.
When you get an audit committee, you want to vest in that audit committee the oversight of the oversight responsibilities for the information technology and other things like that. In the public company context, which is where I operate most, today, if boards don't have at the board level, some board level group that looks at those issues, directors get criticized.
Someone at the audit committee.
No, it typically now gets vested in the audit committee in many companies. Others have special committees that do it because they've been sued where something's gone wrong. The directors are now hypersensitized to that. Where would you contemplate vesting that review in your structure from a directorial level?
I'm not really sure. I mean, the audit committee obviously in the past certainly reviewed all of the internal audits that are performed by
Ernst & Young.
Yeah, Ernst & Young. And so, and in the past, the audit committee would have separate meetings with, in this case, it would be Ernst & Young, and ask specific questions if they had concerns.
Okay, so your intention is to vest that in your audit committee?
Yeah. Yeah, they can have an independent contact with the auditors without staff being there. And they did in the past as well, yeah.
Yes, Michelle.
On page 6, access account auditing,
Which one?
I'm sorry, on page 6, the comment on access account auditing. First of all, was there a failure that had occurred, or this was just something you noticed in terms of your control testing?
It was not a failure that was noted. They do it on an annual basis. Our folks are recommending that they do it a little bit more.
And there was a disagreement by management on this comment. Can either or both sides comment on that?
We agreed on the onboarding part, right? And what we're currently doing there is we've got sort of a short-term process in place where it'll be manual and things would come to the finance department to actually approve any kind of expansion and access. And longer term, we're going to have an automated workflow in our service management system. So that's the plan for that. And also, you should know, and I think it says in here, that we do disable IDs if they're not used in 90 days. That we always do. On the separation side, we have a process in place to disable as soon as somebody leaves. So we don't really think that that's a problem or an issue. So that's why we're disagreeing on the separation side.
And really only on frequency, so they do that annually. We were recommending maybe quarterly, but that's,
Thank you, sir.
that's something for management to decide whether, there's a cost benefit to doing that, if they're comfortable with the other controls. So we're not uncomfortable that they're staying with annual.
Thank you.
They want to make you involved.
I'm done.
If there are no other questions, I want to thank you all again for coming. I was just one quick, about how many employees do you have?
How many employees?
Yes, approximately.
Probably about, I don't know the exact number, but in the high 600s.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you again, and we appreciate all.
Here are all the V's.
They're a very good set of statements.
I'll take those.
Yeah, I think the tables were probably inconsistent with the
Okay. I think we'd use a little coffee. We'll give the members a 2-minute break. I'd like to get, you want to get something? I want to get a little coffee. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the review of the management letter of the Department of Education. Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. My name is Suzette Edmonds-Irish, and we're here representing the Department of Education. I have John Wall, who is the administrator, the chief administrator of the Office of Accounting. I have Desmond White, who represents DITT. Our financial systems operations, Marisol Williams and Margaret Whittaker, who are both directors of the Office of Accounting. So I guess we'll just go through the document, not unless there's any other
I don't
order.
think the comments didn't look that significant, but Deloitte is here, and am I being...
No, I think the comments, you know, are, for the most part, benign. Management is addressing them. Clearly, some of them are taking some time, as we know, and they're repetitive from prior years. However, we're comfortable with the actions that management is taking. And as in the past, we're comfortable with management addressing the issues on a timely basis. They take them seriously. And there's, you know, what I would consider some conversations that go back and forth prior to the comments being finalized, but everything is, you know, addressed in the most timely and effective manner as possible, given the magnitude of the comments. But there's nothing that's either a material weakness or a significant deficiency.
Very good.
So tell me, if that's true, just a one, in your letter, it says, fourth line,
Where are you, Mark?
So what page are you on?
I'm on the Deloitte. What is the reference in the fourth line to 1? No 2. I read it many times, I couldn't find it.
Which included. Oh, the emphasis of the matter, Mark, is that what you're regarding the one emphasis of a matter?
No,
The fourth line.
fourth line,
The?
One in parenthesis.
regarding the, paren 1, and then there's no 2.
Okay, noted, noted.
I shouldn't worry about that. The other thing is, you have restrictive language. I assume that this is a public meeting, which it is, and therefore this letter is available to the public. So putting this restrictive language either doesn't work or it shouldn't be here. I know I make this point every time.
Noted. Noted. I will defer to the AICPA as well. So,
I have no use for them in many other ways.
noted.
But the current year comments are being addressed, right?
They are, they are.
They all are being addressed.
And it's based upon the IT review and so forth, but again,
I have a question apropos of that. This goes back to when I was chairman of the audit committee for the Board of Ed. We always worried about these bank accounts that are controlled by over 1,000 principals. Whether or not...
I was going to do that next, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but
Oh, no, go right ahead.
if you have that large universe, there's going to be something wrong someplace. Who is watching over that at the board level in terms of the $1 million bank account? Smaller bank accounts, we used to find every once in a while something funny. Who watches that? And is it being done regularly?
So our banking unit, they have a banking survey every year, and the bank balances are reported there. And also, it's incumbent upon our Office of Internal Audit to then audit, to select and to audit.
In our OAG office, every 3 years, they make a cycle and investigate each school.
Thank you. And if the bank account's over $1 million, it's uninsured for that. Have a policy about doing anything over the $250,000? More money, but it's up.
Yeah, it's usually the 250, but we usually remind the PTA or the school or wherever it is that it is uninsured and its accountability is back to them.
Is there a way, rather than it being optional or a guidance, that it be mandatory that they not allow accounts to have more than $250,000 their activities?
That would limit them. They are a very unique group that they need things, there's a lot of things they do on the fly. And they need access to these accounts immediately. They can't be, having like they come up with a plan, whether it's for trophies or lab to their school, and they just, to have fundraisers and just keep accumulating these funds until they're ready to purchase it or to end it. So to have it split up 5 different ways, that may not be advantageous to them. Yes, it is as to accountants, and yes, it is. We have that it should be insured, but there's very few banks that they do business with that we have that worry about that they will go under and not lose their funds.
How many schools are there?
It depends on what you interpret as a school. There's, they say there's 1,800 unique school names. There's actually probably close to 1,200
move over
buildings.
the mic, John. Could you move that mic over there? It'll be easier to hear you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there's probably 1,800 school names, but there's more surely 1,200 buildings. Within certain buildings, there could be 2 or 3 schools.
So you're saying it's more like 1,200?
1,200 building sites holding 1,800 schools. You could have 2 or 3 schools.
Used to be 1,000 school buildings years ago.
Yeah.
Used to be 1,000 school buildings, and the other statistic was 1 million people on public assistance. That's years ago. I mean, it was a statistic that was quoted all the time.
Public assistance, or also that was the school population?
No. And there was a school population too, 1 million and 1 million, 1,000, 1 million, 1 million. Things have improved, thank God. I read it. What do you have to do with Do It? I mean, what is Do It doing?
So I can speak to that.
I'm sorry?
I can speak to that.
Go ahead, sir.
So Do It provides, like, the DOE has a main data center at 2 Metrotech that had electrical issues. We don't have enough electrical power in the building. So Do It provided what we call hoteling services, where they let us use a portion of their data center at 11 Metrotech. So we have about 8 cabinets there, so that we're just keeping.
So your data processing facilities are located in Metro Plus 2, is that it?
Yes, in 2 Metrotech. Their data center is in 11 Metrotech.
Okay, so your data center's there, and then you have the Do It data center.
Yes, we're using a portion of their
Okay,
data
now I
center to
begin.
provide our services.
And you're worried about the security between the two in that comment, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I kept reading it.
Can I,
Go ahead.
why did you put this comment here and not in the city?
Michelle, up.
But why did, I'm sorry, sir. Why did you put this comment here in the Department of Education's letter rather than in the city's
I don't
letter,
know why
since
you
you
could
say
do
in
that.
your
That's the thing, you could
response
have done it
that
the
you
other
were
way.
directing it at Do It?
I think because it came up during the Department of Ed audit, and therefore we put it in there. I mean, clearly it may have been an oversight, and it could have been in both, for that matter, but
Did it go to Do It for response?
So this was a point of contention during the audit. I don't think that this is something that the DOE, the recommendation was that we have management, approval and control, which was proven. We did follow up with Do It. They assured us that they're revisiting their process and that they would clearly enforce that process. So we were supporting the recommendation of the audit, and we did work to do it. I don't think that this is something the DOE could resolve on its own.
Thank you.
And getting back to the prior year comment about the cash, so you generate this listing of how much cash is in each of the schools, and you're more concerned if it's more than 300,000? That's your cutoff? or do you sample or audit it all? I guess that's what I'm trying to get straight.
Right, so we would.
It's a lot of money. I mean, you wouldn't think that, what is it, the old GO money or what? Maybe I'm too old, I don't know. But where does all this money come from?
These are the,
Yeah.
right, most of the.
What?
It's the PTOs, the
fiduciary.
Oh, so that comes from it. I see. They've raised
The
it.
real answer should be they should be spending the money, but
Yeah, it's raised for a specific purpose, is what.
But it's an organization that's outside the city that controls what they want to spend it for and how much. If you go to affluent areas, they're going to be very high.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, yes, in certain areas, I'm sure it will be.
And you also have the student organizations, which could be very high, and it's up to the students how they want to spend that money.
The thing is, when they get the listing, they're looking to identify accounts with more than 300,000, is what you're saying in your response. Is that a good cutoff? I don't know.
The unit determines 300,000 to be the threshold, and then they send out a form letter requesting that the owners of the accounts reply back as to the purpose. Why is that so high?
Even if it was 100,000, or only if it's over 3?
It's over 3. Other than that, it's left to the OAG, as I said before, that every 3 years on a cycle that they examine the accounts.
We found that there were occasionally
Right, but
irregularities.
But it's, with 1,800 different unique bank accounts, it's hard for a unit the size.
That's your 1,800 number.
Each.
And within the 1,800, there may be more than one? Or could it be a
Within the
PT?
1,200, there is more than one. There's 1,800 school names
Okay.
comprised amongst 1,200 building sites. Because in one building, you go to the first floor, and
Cash, but there's also, some schools have investments because of scholarship funds.
Yeah, no, you haven't, who does your internal auditing? Ernst & Young?
Ernst & Young has done it.
And then you have your own auditors as well, don't you, or no?
We have a auditor general.
You have an auditor general. He has a staff, or he or she has a staff, okay.
You know, when I was involved, and I hate to say this, we used to look at things like the food in the warehouses and have that looked at by the auditors. Grace at the time. I think that's been cleaned up. But there are areas that used to be of concern, the custodians, food, and is that totally under control now, or do you look at it, do you have a problem with it any place?
So usually the food, no. Back then, we don't have the ice machines or storage facilities that we used to have because the vendors now have their own and they can get the food out to our schools. As far as the custodians, we still have a great deal of old inventory, only because we have a great deal of old buildings. And sometimes you need some lever from the 1930s that was only going to fit this one unique school unless they do a major capital improvement and revamp the whole thing.
All I can remember is one custodian was having a shooting gallery in the basement. I don't mean with guns, with needles.
They make a lot of money, the custodians, too, but...
Oh, one of the schools, after 2 or 3 years, the Jeep that the school bought was his. Is that still the case?
That's stopped now, but it used to be the case. I believe it was closer to like 4 or 5 years.
No, when I was involved, we focused on that one.
Let me ask you very quickly, we're going through some statistics. So how many students would you say there are in the 1,200 or 1,800?
I think we're at 1.1 million.
1.1. So the student population hasn't grown as much as the building population, because I guess you wanted smaller classes, therefore you needed more buildings, more modern and whatnot. All right. That's good. That's a good thing, sir.
This is a slightly separate issue, but it's related to the school buildings. We've had these telecommunications mergers happening, and one of the issues we were looking at, was the issue of broadband access in our, to our public schools. And I know there's federal law that is involved in this and a surcharge. What is, have you tested your systems as far as your network speeds, and are they sufficient as far as the speeds go? Are we still near dial-up speeds, or are we advancing to 300 Mbps, which is where, most systems are, at least in Midtown?
So as a general statement, I would say that the bandwidth that we have currently is definitely not sufficient. We don't believe that we meet the federal recommended guidelines. There are a number of capital projects, including SSBA and, potential E-rate funding. We're putting plans together to try to get every building up to 100 megs. No school in our system currently has less than a 10 meg per second pipe. Most schools are in the 40 range. We have like 1 or 2 schools that are over 100 going to their schools. So, we've heard the complaint loud from schools. They're very vocal about the need for internet. Unfortunately, it's a very complex system trying to deliver, internet to, 1,200 physically separate buildings throughout the city. I assure you that we have a number of plans in place that over the next year to 2 years, we'll be aggressively trying to increase the bandwidth in schools.
Thank you.
At the end, I'll hand you this because it seems to me that the Board of Education should be able to figure out singulars and plurals and nouns and pronouns, so you can have fun with what I found.
Just one more.
Gladly take it.
I'm sorry, just, the State Department of Education insists that you give them a separate set of statements. Do they comment on the statements that you give them? Do they ask questions? Do they report back?
Oh, of course, they comment on them.
They do. Because it's a lot of extra work. You're part of the, you're part of the city's CAFA. Okay. All right, I was just curious. Are there any more questions? Thank you. It's a good, you're doing a good job because this is a minor thing given the size of your organization. You're doing a good job. He's doing a great job.
Some of it's just.
We have
It's
one.
hers, they, it's. And someday you guys are going to brand it as such instead of saying therefore. And I will fall a dead thing.
Trying to find out if it was
Check with the grammarian, and your as such is not good usage.
trying to find out if it was management's or our response.
Every accounting firm is as such, and nobody ever heard of it.
Ma'am,
Common language.
ma'am, you left something. Miss? I don't know, is that hers or?
It doesn't reflect well on
Oh,
Okay, let's go.
okay, we have the city's management letter. I don't know. Let me ask Jackie. I don't know if there's anybody still here on this?
People are coming in, Bernie.
No, you have the Pfizer people on a lot of it. I know, you have to.
I'm going to give up the public.
The meetings, I thought we'd be out early. You can't
You got to get me out soon.
You can't get out.
I
We
have,
people talk.
Or
No, but it's, all right. Could you just quickly, you are all with Pfizer?
Yes. Yes.
No one is with Do It. Everybody is with Pfizer. Okay.
in the back.
the hand just went up.
What?
Do it is in the back.
Okay, that's the,
There's some
oh,
Funny, you look
representatives
like
here.
a human being.
you could come to the table if you like.
I couldn't resist. I'm not very reverent.
So, in terms, just as a quick overview, these comments don't look very serious either, do they, sir?
No, it's the same scenario as the DOE, with the exception of the first comment, which was addressed earlier by the presentation from OMB
Right, sir.
regarding the grants management system. And clearly, we've noted in there that there's been progress made. However, I have not seen, or Deloitte
No,
has
no,
not seen.
I appreciate that, sir. I mean, considering it's an $80 billion operation, this town, I don't think these are very serious. I mean, we must commend the accounting people and the data processing people who work so closely with them, you know, for doing so good a job. All right, by the way, it's a very fine, heavy paper that you use, almost like a linen paper. I says, my God, the city is
Should be
spending
recycled.
money or something. I'm teasing.
While you're waiting, Bernie, there is on page 31.
No, I'm not, don't go there yet, because there's some other things,
No, no, I just
honestly.
happened to pick that one up. I'm flipping. I'll wait for yours.
So the overstatements that you talk about on page 6, comment 1, go ahead, Glenn, get to it.
Okay.
So there was no effect, they were corrected. When were they corrected? After the books were closed?
I'm looking, Bernie, I don't know if we stated it, I mean, but from the overstatement, the fact of the matter was, they didn't materially impact the financial
No,
statement.
they're not
We brought it to
material.
Jackie and Michelle's attention, and I believe they were.
Your materiality thresholds are very, very high.
No, but nonetheless, it was an error, and we brought it to management's
And it was-
attention, but that's it. I don't think it was.
Pardon me?
It was corrected in
And the
time for the
financials,
issuance
all right,
of the capital.
thank you.
The one that's on page 8.
8, on the PIT receivable,
You're saying that it wasn't burst, or it has an impact.
It's just the wording is a little
Okay.
confusing.
Apologize, we vetted, and it was, I missed it, but point noted.
but this too was taken care of in the.
It had an impact,
Yes.
and then
Yeah, nope, you're right.
paragraphs down, it says it had no impact.
Okay.
To Mike.
And on page 10, it was corrected, but absent some of your recommendations, and I think they're agreeing with them, it should be better in the future. I think that's it, because some of this could be
I
expensive.
would imagine it is. I mean, this is based upon statistical sampling. We find the error, we speak with management, but Bernie, these are typically one-offs whereby we're required. I mean, they're not material.
Oh, no, that's
but we
all right.
disclose the dollar amounts because we as a firm believe you should.
No, I think it's.
The non-governmental grants, Michelle, are not that high, are they? I mean, they're high, but yeah.
Yeah, you mean this particular issue?
Yeah.
You know, this is just a very small situation. There's some reimbursement that the city gets from HHC that is traditionally recorded as an other categorical grant. It's not formally recognized as a grant, which is what Deloitte was concerned with.
All right.
I think, Nicole, that OMB is remedying.
They would be
the
private
situation.
grants, right? The non-governmental grants? No, you don't.
It hadn't been formally the subject of a grant agreement, because in substance, it's just a reimbursement from HHC to the city.
All right.
Because there was no grant agreement, Deloitte was concerned about our classification.
There will be a grant agreement going forward.
And on the disabled, in other words, that's,
The one that has all the business.
get rid of them once they leave. right? That's really what you're saying, get them all,
Which page, Bernie? I apologize.
pardon me?
Which page?
What
Page
page?
14, 13, you know, terminate.
And they do a good job. There was,
Yeah,
again, some
yeah,
instances
that's-
whereby, but the,
Yeah,
were the
no,
anomalies.
you
but
want that done.
Correct. That would be best practice, but again, a good job is being.
For security and whatnot.
Correct.
On page 17, the Oracle password settings, I'll ask the FISA, you use Oracle?
Personnel system, timekeeping system.
What is your main system now, FMS?
The FMS accounting system uses
Well, for certain operate.
Oracle is the software that a number of business applications use to store the data.
Okay, all right.
FMS being one.
About management succession.
That was in the DOE,
DOE, yeah.
and we've had it previously in the cities as well.
Last year. Is that something that's being done generally? Because I don't see it in public company.
I would say in the government or in the public sector arena, whereby there is no, for lack of better terms, bench strength, Mark. So whereby if there's a buyout or, you know, there's people who are retiring, there's knowledge that has been transitioned or passed along to the younger generation, and therefore we think it's worthy of a comment. And I mean, that's happening throughout the public sector, whereby you have a group of people who are mature.
Or matured, ED. Okay, I'm just not accustomed to seeing it. The other thing I noticed here, I can't help it, the amount of disclosure about the pension and OPEB in the documents dwarfs the financial disclosure in the footnotes. And just because we are charged with something here, the idea that we've got a system in which that is so overbearing is somehow at variance the way enterprises should be run. There's nothing can be done about it. That's worthy of comment. The impact of OPEB and the pension liability on the enterprise is also worthy of comment.
Disclosures, you're then going to be brought up on lack thereof, and then the SEC goes after you under the fraud statute. So I think from a transparency perspective, last year with the TDAs and everything like that. So in that regard, I would respectfully disagree and say that the disclosures are probably necessary, and that's worthy of putting in the
I'm
file.
not saying they're not necessary. I'm saying the underlying facts are disturbing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But the bulk of relating to our data system deal with data security. Am I correct? That sounds like it.
Yeah.
We know it's critical.
We look at the systems clearly because we're relying on the
The
systems.
systems
for the
are
reports.
established, and they're running well, I
Yes,
think.
yes,
So
yes.
security, that's an issue. Yeah, I could understand that. All right, going into the prior ones, the accrued real estate tax refunds, that could be a lot of money.
What page are you on, Bernie?
On page 30. That's a lot.
Is that the certiorari as well? Huh? Yeah, that's what it is. Silver's firm.
So it was a 14?
No, this was, we found.
There was again in 15, there was an
15,
overstatement?
It was a $13 million
Yeah.
error or overstatement.
And it was not corrected? It's not material, but it stayed on the balance sheet that way?
I don't recall, Bernie, if it was corrected or
Was
not. I
that
think it
corrected?
was. I think all of these were corrected when we brought them to
But
management.
it was corrected before the statements were issued? I don't think so.
They were. Bernie, they were.
I
They
don't
were.
think so. No, she doesn't. I didn't think so either.
They were.
All right. Michelle, there's a bank office?
There is,
Pardon me?
yes, there is, in accountancy.
And the departments, it must be huge.
So there are many accounts that are reconciled by
What a
the
volume.
agencies. But there are central accounts that are reconciled by our office, and there's also some oversight. There's also some oversight of reconciliation, especially of revenue accounts that we've taken on.
So your unit doesn't audit their reconciliations, you just want them to submit them, is that it?
It's a combination.
may audit some.
We get all bank account reconciliations.
You may
at the end
sample
of the
some
year.
too.
And there is for the impressed accounts,
Some of the larger ones.
some testing. There's also a relatively new series of revenue accounts that the Department of Finance set up to try and disentangle the receipts from various sources, from various agencies, through credit cards, through other electronic means. And as a result of that, we've needed to set up a small unit to work with agency staff to make sure that those accounts are reconciled properly.
And in connection, Glenn, with the audit, you've noticed that some of these reconciliations were not submitted.
That's correct. That's correct. Because we then select from the records.
Material
and we
amounts
look
of
at-
cash, would you say? Or-
Material? No.
No.
No. But again, we look at the.
No, it's cash.
The procedures, and the Comptroller's Office has their closing documentation.
That has to be, it's part of the
It's a
procedures.
deviation.
I agree. Yes, sir.
So in the, for the Department of Finance, regarding page 34, with regards to the batch job completion, it seems to implementing, to addressing the storage capacity and being able for the auditors to access, and for the agency for that matter, to access the longer period of time.
Please introduce yourself.
Sure. Ed Voyer, Department of Finance. Architected when the vendor deployed it 6 years ago is in such a fashion that in order to increase the storage beyond what it already has been increased to requires a re-architecting of the back end of the system. And that's something that we've been working to obtain funding next year.
Okay. And so about how much would that cost? Do you have an idea?
I don't have that estimate. However, to mitigate this, what we have also done, just to back up a second, the are very verbose, okay, and take up a lot of space. We have, as an alternative, we have started having this system send emails notifying certain people of the success or failure of the jobs, and we can certainly save those, and we have started to save those so that we have some documentation the job successfully completed.
Okay. And so are those logs then being provided to the auditors for them to verify or to have the...
The logs we can only keep for approximately 2 to 3 weeks.
Right, but you said you're emailing them now?
No, we're not emailing the log. Logs are too big to be. Email is generated to a group that says giving those emails as documentation of the fact that the job executed. Now, we did not have that. We had emails, okay, but we were not saving them specifically so we could provide them to the auditors when they request them. But that's something that's been implemented now going forward.
Okay. Yeah. And do you have a sense of a timeline? I mean, I understand it's an arduous task of addressing your back-end architecture for this type of thing, but is there a relative timeline as to how long it'll take to implement this?
I know how long it should take. I don't know how it's going to fit into the schedule of all the other projects that the agency has. It's probably a 3 to 4 month effort, but we'd have to see how it fits in to the priorities of the agency and the other systems.
Is it not? I think so.
CAMA is a generic term, the Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal System. The old CAMA system was a mainframe-based system and was retired about 5 or 6 years ago, and a new distributed system was deployed from a different vendor.
You have people doing the appraisals, right?
Yes.
There's a unit doing it, so what do they use? Handheld or?
They do not have any handheld devices presently. We're in the process of working with the vendor to provide software that will run on these devices.
So it's a manual operation that they?
In the field, it's manual, and they come back to
all
the
right.
office, and then they will enter it into the
And
computer
enter it
system.
in.
Yes.
What was the problem here, Glenn, actually? You want the data to be stored for a longer
Well,
period?
it's showing, you know, again, it's showing the actual logs themselves while now the emails are being saved, but the emails don't give the level of detail that one would expect to see. So best practice would say you maintain the logs while the email is going, you know, in the right direction. It's an older system, and thereby, you know, restricting the capabilities of what management can save or not save. So the ask would be to maintain the logs. Unfortunately, right now, it's restrictive. So subsequent to, the emails now are being saved as support to show that if you test the controls around the system whereby something is run, this email is generated. So you can get there in a kind of backdoor way, if you would. So the emails give you some assurance, but it wasn't occurring for the entire year that was under audit. Going forward, those emails are being generated, so.
This was for the CAMA system, if I may interject. And the purpose of these jobs is to transmit data between the distributed CAMA system and the mainframe RPAD system, where the actual assessment is taking place, the actual calculations of the assessed values, okay? And what these logs were doing is keeping track of the transmission of data. File was sent, received, thank you very much. So on the
Those very
mainframe side,
important.
yes, on the mainframe side, those logs are always there because they have virtually unlimited space. On the distributed side, that's where CAMA runs currently, and that is what the recommendation is for specifically.
Correct.
I'm sorry I cut you off.
So, this has been going on for a few years, that,
Correct.
the comments.
What's the size of an average log?
Oh.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
I'm willing to bet it's bigger than a bread box. It's very big.
On a nightly basis, the logs are basically accrued for the entire job stream. It's not a log per job, it's the day's log stream. And I think it runs in the, I want to say it's somewhere north of 30 megabytes per day. Somewhere north of that, but I wouldn't be.
Right, it's the multi-billions, the assessments in the city.
I mean, I just think with data capacity becoming far more efficient, I mean, you can get a jump drive, I mean, obviously you guys are experts in this field, but I mean, you can get an 8 gig jump drive for $2 now. I mean, whereas 5 years ago it cost you over $100. The thought is, you know, I mean, so it's more of an architecture issue.
These servers reside at Do It, okay, and no one's walking in there and plugging in a jump drive.
Oh, no, I understand that.
Because of
I'm just
security
trying-
reasons.
I mean, there's other reasons. There's the cloud, there's other things where you can put, I mean, all right.
It's something that we are aware of, and we agree, and we were working to address it.
I think it's the department, one of the departments of finance's major efforts is the assessments, am I right? Because it's so important to the real estate taxes, which is the major tax for the city.
That is correct.
Yeah, all right.
The data is verified before the notice of property value goes out. All the properties and the parcels are verified that all the data has been transmitted. So we're confident that all of this is being taken care of correctly. We agree with the recommendation, and we will work to implement it.
Okay, if there are no more comments on the city's management letter, thank you all for your patience for being here.
Considering the size of the city and the amount of money, nothing.
Well, the camera's a big one. The camera's a
No,
big
but
one.
I'm just saying, in terms of the.
No, in terms of, we would expect something like this. Good job.
What's next, executive session?
You want to go into executive
I
session?
think we should ask the auditors to talk to us after that.
Yeah, we should.
Pardon?
We should have a session with you.
That's
Okay,
fine.
yeah. Take a quick minute, the executive session.
Oh, I didn't know there was one.
What?
I didn't know there was one today.
Well, Mark is right, we ought to talk to the auditors.
The idea is to
We
have
have
a
to make a
session with the
motion.
auditors alone
All right,
without anybody from management.
have to make a
Let's
motion
make a
to go
motion to go into executive session.
I so move. Second.
And,
Without management.
leave the well, should we leave the private and public members, or just the private members, Mr. Kaplan? Private.
Management is the public members.
I'm sorry?
Management here is the public members.
Okay, so,
Private members only.
private only, okay, okay. Okay, private only.